On Podcast Nation, it is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me another episode of Strategy with Jason, a very special edition of the episode of Strategy with Jason, because I get to talk to everybody that is presenting at the Kain Automotive event coming up here next week. It's literally next week. If you haven't got a ticket, you still can. You need to go to kain.auto. The first hotel's booked up, but I think there's like 3 more hotels. So you got to make sure you're there. It's one of my favorite events. It's just a great place where you can collaborate between both dealers and vendors in a very relaxing environment. Plus, we're also going to be having a little bit of fun. Hey, today with me, I have David Steinberg with Foureyes, and we're going to talk all things about leveraging lessons from automotive technology and how some of those failures can actually accelerate our AI success. I'm so glad and excited to have David with me. David, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Oh, dude, it's been a minute. I feel like, we've done this a few times, but it just feels like it was just a few weeks ago, but it's been a little while.
It has. I missed you at NADA this year, I think, but the year before, we spent some time together, which was fantastic. So.
Oh, dude, it's always a good time when I get to jam with you. So, David, I love kicking off these podcasts with a little origin story, because I'm just fascinated, right? No one wakes up one day just, I'm going to commit my life to a career in the automotive industry. So, David, if you don't mind, let's start off there. How did you get started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry?
Well, I've always been an entrepreneur. So I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur fairly early on. I took a year off college and I went and tried to get the worst job I could possibly find with the most responsibility. So I became the youngest manager ever of this convenience store in Plaid Pantry. It's like a 7-Eleven when I was like 19. But that taught me that I could work on my own. It gave me the confidence to do that. But so Foureyes is like my 5th business. Everything I've ever started is still in business today, which is cool to like start things and be able to get them off the ground and see them, move beyond you. But I've always, I consider myself, I would rather be an artist. I'm just not good enough at art. So like business is sort of my art. And so everything I do centers around like an idea or like, what problem am I trying to solve? And if you look back at my whole career, minus my detour into the lumber industry, which was really about practicing what I preached because we were helping lumber companies make more money. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to do it myself.
Sure.
That everything's about basically been this idea of how to use data to help you sell. So much of what we see is how to use data to market. And I've always been interested in the idea of what's now sort of a well-known field of sales enablement, which is like, well, how do you help your salespeople achieve more success? And that's always been kind of my focus. That's where I've always, all of my businesses have been around the idea of sales enablement, and Foureyes is really, centered on sales enablement.
Well, look, I'm glad that, you decided to get into the automotive space. It's been fun to really watch yourself and the company kind of grow through the space and into it. And, I'm super excited about your topic. It's a cool title, man. Stuck in Neutral. Lessons. Well, no, it makes sense, right? It does. I like this, and so timely too, right? Stuck in Neutral, leveraging lessons from automotive technology failures. All right, to accelerate AI success, look, all kinds of directions. I imagine you can go with this topic. So I'm super stoked to kind of get into it and see what perspective and direction you decide to take from this really cool title. So what are maybe 2 or 3 takeaways that you hope dealers take from your presentation and actually implement into either their marketing or their operational efforts?
Well, I think one, if you look at it in the last 30 years, we've had like numerous sort of technology moments. We've had really the internet came out, email, social media. You've had all these like moments that sort of have all this promise to revolutionize auto sales. But if you actually look at it, the average cars sold per dealer hasn't changed in the last 30 years, over 30 years.
Yeah.
And so we're not really getting the juice from the squeeze. It's more of an arms race of everybody just sort of keeping up with the Joneses than actually becoming more efficient due to technology. And that's what I mean by stuck in neutral. And so as a technologist, what you see is that The failure is when everyone gets into the glow of new technology. So right now it's like generative AI. When everyone gets into the glow of it, what we forget to look at what happens with the unintended consequences. So, and you can go back and look at sort of the unintended consequences of each of these moments, and you can start to really predict, oh, so what are going to be the unintended consequences of using AI in my business? And when you solve for those, and I think some of the things that Foureyes is doing to solve for those, that's where you really have that growth. So like, for example, email, right? Email was promised to be this huge productivity tool.
Yep.
Email was going to be, oh my gosh, look how productive we can be. You used to have to get this message this way and this way and this way, and now you can just send an email. Well, the unintended consequences, it became really easy to push work off of yourself, right? You could just email someone, oh, I got it off my desk. I got it off my desk. I got it off my desk. So it just work started hot potatoing all around rather than actually getting solved. And we still do that today. I mean, that's like the unintended consequence of email. Unintended consequence of the internet, right? We put all our prices and products online. And we thought, oh, look how much easier we're making it for the consumer. But we didn't account for how much harder we were making it for the salesperson, because now they were no longer a conduit for information. So that the customer no longer felt like they needed the salesperson. So, when you look at AI, so what are some of the unintended consequences of AI? And what you're seeing is that we're not actually, what most of the people who are solving for AI in automotive are failing to consider is sort of what is the bad client experience comes because in each experience the customer has at a dealership, there's very little institutional memory of where they were before.
Sure.
And AI sort of loosely promises to solve that, but not really. And so the unintended consequence you can already predict of AI is that we're actually solving most of the AI implementations are solving for the wrong problem in automotive. And so they're sort of coming in promising these little efficiencies, but the unintended consequence is less institutional memory. And and that's really where the bad customer experience comes from. So I think I'm really excited to sort of break it down more and show basically not a different path, but like a slightly divergent path. Sure. That will, I think, equal a lot more success for dealerships and a better customer experience.
Oh, look, I dig what you're saying, and I'm kind of curious because I want to go a little farther down this rabbit hole with you. By the way, I love finding rabbit holes. Do you feel right now that kind of as an industry, are we currently looking at AI in the sense of, and I've seen this because I've seen multiple companies split their approach to it, right? Some are approaching it from more of an assistance approach. Some of them are approaching AI more from a replacement approach, a process replacement or a people replacement, or I've also seen it where it's become more of a integration, meaning multiple systems that never really spoke to each other. There's now a central hub to kind of do this. So what approach is you think hindering, the industry the most right now?
So I go back a little bit, and I think that for the auto industry to remain undisruptible, right? And right now, I do not think the auto industry is undisruptible, because I think that the customer experience is still bad enough that it is highly disruptible. And what I mean by that is and when we see it in all the talks at private equity and all the calls we get from private equity, which is that there is so much of a demand to come in and disrupt automotive because the client satisfaction scores are so low. So it's like, okay, we must be able to do something here. So I think that when you look at, well, how, the problem to solve is how do you create a great client experience? And then I think similar to that, it's how do you make your people sort of superheroes? And the reason for that is that your people and having people are going to be your competitive advantage over, say, like an Amazon or a different solution. So right now, I think that a lot of people and the practices in a dealership, the people aren't as efficient as they should be or they need to be indisruptible.
No, look, I totally agree with you. I mean, I don't do nearly as much dealer consulting as I used to, and I still do now for a handful of some big dealer groups, but no, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a people process and technology company. Typically, when I come in to audit or find a problem, within a sales organization or a fixed ops organization, it is usually one of those three that are not in alignment with the other two. And it's almost kind of dragging the other two down like a boat anchor, and sometimes maybe it's the people dragging that process and technology down, or maybe it's the process or the lack of a process that's not connecting the people and technology together. So no, I get what you're saying. It's that balance that needs
to be more specific. I think if you say our job is to get the people out of it, you are going to, basically there's much bigger companies that are much better at not having people.
Yeah.
And so you're sort of setting yourself up for a trap where someone's going to say, thank you very much. You now took people out of the equation. And so Amazon can come in and do it much, much better and at much higher scale than anything you can do. So I think that the key is how do you keep people in the center, really offering value? And right now I would say that there's a lot of work to do there. And so, we have to go back to looking at how do you use AI to truly make people more powerful. And that's the hardest part of AI. And that's the part that us vendors don't want to tell you and don't want to talk about, because it is the hardest part. So we want to say, oh, look at all the efficiency we can gain. Look how bad this process is, and we can just do it with AI. But in the meantime, you haven't made your people smarter. And so I think that it's a fail. I think as an industry, if we just do it that way, we will fail. We will not get the efficiency we want out of this moment, and it'll just be another moment that just came and passed.
Well, it'll be the same fail like you were saying earlier with the websites.
Yeah,
we put these websites out there and we put all this information out there, and then we disconnected the salesperson as being the source of the information, right? It wasn't necessarily I don't know if it was necessarily intentional. It is just
these are unintended consequences, right? So, but the key is, how do we learn from our mistakes? And the way you do it is you look at each step and you say, instead, like, you can see all the benefits of generative AI. There's huge benefits. It's awesome. It's incredible. I love playing with it. I love the work we're doing right now. But you have to also analyze, well, what are the unintended consequences and how do we solve for that? And that's really where I think the hard work is.
No, look, I agree with you. It is work. It's maybe my inner Boy Scouts coming out in me or something like that. But it's, the saying, be prepared. That kind of seems to be the feeling here, right? Is that, there needs to be a level of preparation that goes into this, from our operations perspective, because look, technology is not going to slow down. Yeah. That's not going to happen at all. Making sure our people and processes are up to speed with those technologies and are aligned with the growth of those technologies and the potential growth of those technologies, I think is what's going to, let's say, the cream rise to the top. That's, you're going to see the, who's really the operators out there versus the ones that didn't quite get it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, if you look at it from the dealer's perspective, all that's happened in the last 30 years is their cost structure has just gone up for really the same amount of efficiency. Like, they're not any more efficient. And if you define efficiency by, hey, just very simply, what's the average number of cars each person in my dealership can sell in a month? That has not changed. We haven't moved the needle. So I think that's really the KPI to measure to, and to ask, like, okay, how do I make my team more efficient? And I think when you start to look at it that way, you're going to make a different set of decisions. Because
whoops.
Yeah, I think of it in some ways like it's a video game where you have computers talking to people now, and you have your salespeople. And in each step, you want the memory to build. And so, for me, like, and I don't know if I'll even get into this, how much I'll get into this in our presentation in Kain, but, like, there's this big data problem in automotive that still exists, which is just that data is still so siloed and stuck that what happens is, it's like a bad doctor visit where they can't pull up your chart when you go to the doctor. And that's what, that's essentially the car buying process. There's no memory. There's very little memory in each step of the way as you move through a process, and that's part of the reason why it's the process isn't there, and AI isn't necessarily solving for that. You have to be very specific and deliberate with AI to actually solve for that problem.
No, and it is all about being deliberate, and that definitely sounds like that's going to be kind of a core topic for you here, right? Like nothing, like if we're not intentional, all right, then what has happened in the past will happen again. That was the same thing I think with the websites. It wasn't that because we weren't necessarily intentional, right? It's just by osmosis, that was the byproduct of it, dude. This sounds look, I'm stoked for this. I really am. And David, you always do a great job of finding some very cool rabbit holes and just taking us down and down that to a level that I think is just so cool. So like everybody out there watching or listening right now, make sure that you come, to David's presentation with a good empty notebook and prepared to take some serious notes because he's going to drop some very, very cool knowledge bombs on you guys. But hey, David, I know we're the tail end of our conversation today and went so fast. I know we could jam about this for an easy hour, no problem. But before I let you go, David, for everybody out there watching, listening right now, who would love to maybe connect with you, maybe even learn a little bit more about what Foureyes does, what's the best way to do so?
Well, our website, Foureyes.io, but I'm also David at Foureyes.io, or you can find me on the LinkedIn or anywhere like that. But I'm happy, I'm happy to be approachable. Again, David at Foureyes.io is probably the quickest way, or I'll even drop my cell phone number in. But yeah, we're as a company, we pride ourselves on being approachable and being people. So just contact us.
I know you are so approachable. Like after your presentation, I know there's a pretty bunch of people just going to walk right up to you. You're just going to get into like 6 conversations like that. So, dude, like David, I like it's always a great time jamming with you. Super stoked to see you here this next week. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been a lot of fun. You have yourself an amazing day.
Thank you, Jason. You too. Thank you.